Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar organized by JetBrains. I'm Paul Everett, PyCharm Developer Advocate, and I'll be your host. The topic for today's webinar is React plus TypeScript plus TDD with PyCharm. Full stack web development has long been a big thing in Python. React has long been a big thing in full stack. TypeScript, it's become a bit of a thing with React. We're going to talk today about that combination of React and TypeScript seen through the lens of test-driven development, with the IDE helping us get into a good development flow. Be prepared for the word flow. I shall say it a bunch. And with that mention of IDE, we have a surprise special guest, Ekaterina Prigara, Product Marketing Manager of our WebStorm IDE, the person keeping the madness of the JavaScript ecosystem in her head so you don't have to. Welcome.
Yeah, hi, Paul. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks, everyone, for joining us live today. I hope we will all learn something new from Paul.
Yes, ditto, back at you on that. We are so lucky to have you join us on such short notice. You'll be fielding questions and discussing points with me along the way, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'll try my best to answer all the questions as we go, and then I will ask Paul to answer the most tricky questions.
Unfair. 2 weeks ago, I mentioned this to you yesterday. 2 weeks ago, a big name in the world of Python mentioned that he had purchased both PyCharm Professional and WebStorm. He wasn't aware that we bundle WebStorm and PyCharm. I hear that a lot at conferences, at the booth and conferences. Do you hear that a lot?
Yeah, right. We get this question sometimes. So we see WebStorm as an IDE for developers who work with JavaScript and TypeScript, doing client-side development, server-side, mobile, using these languages. There are also obviously a lot of full-stack developers for whom Python is the primary language, but they obviously also need some JavaScript support in their IDE. That's why PyCharm Professional inherits all the JavaScript, React, CSS, HTML support, you name it, from WebStorm. So we want to make sure we have the right tool for every developer and that our tools provide the best development experience. So if your main programming language at the moment is Python, but you need sometimes to do some JavaScript, then go with PyCharm. So if you're doing mostly JavaScript, and don't want or don't need anything related to Python or Java or PHP technology stack, we have WebStorm, which, by the way, also has some basic syntax highlighting for Python. And if you work with all different kinds of projects and languages at the same time, you should consider IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. It's like the most multi-purpose tool that we have. And so all JetBrains IDEs, they're built on top of the IntelliJ platform, so it's easy for us to bring all the WebStorm features to PyCharm Professional and for you to have a very familiar development experience if you switch from one JetBrains IDE to another.
And as something you and I talked about yesterday, no matter what combination that was just mentioned, we want to give you a ready-to-go experience out of the box, pre-configured, not a lot of fiddling, ready to go. So let's go ahead and proceed. Today we're going to cover material from a 12-part tutorial series. The URL is here at the bottom. I also put it into the chat. That will let you follow along. And the goal for me on this is kind of let your brain engage, not worry so much about the details and syntax. Let you understand and also interact with us, ask questions. You've got Ekaterina here, just a wonderful resource. Go ahead and ask some good questions. Now, 12 parts, 1 hour or less than an hour. We are not going to get through all of this. So I intend to split this in half and do a second part later on, but it's okay because, and let me switch over to that. Each one of these, so for example, we're gonna start in project setup in just a second. Each one of these has a narrated video of me talking about everything done in this tutorial step. So again, let your brain concentrate and engage. All right, now that we're all set, let's have some fun. All right, you're gonna hear me swapping papers in the background because I'm gonna follow along on that tutorial, which lets you follow along as well. Reminder, here is the tutorial. We are going to be on project setup. To not waste any time, I already did project creation, and I'm going to be starting here. So let me go over to the IDE, which is PyCharm. And it will feel a lot like WebStorm, but it's PyCharm. I'm going to bring up the terminal in PyCharm, and I'm going to do this npm run script start, and it will fire up the React development server, and it will load up a page, and there we go. This is from a React development experience. It is a really productive environment because I can open up a file. I'll turn this back on. I'll turn it off later. I can open up a file and make a change and say something like reload. And down at the bottom, it'll recompile the changes and automatically tell the browser to reload. This is a pretty common part of modern web front-end development to make the DX development experience a lot better. Works really well. Okay, so next up, I'm doing this in a terminal window, which is kind of a common way to do it, but we can do a whole lot better. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to show using the IDE, a visual front end to all this stuff. So I'm going to go to the package.json. I'm going to right click on it and say show npm scripts. It's going to give me a little tool window over here. And this is the way I've done it forever and ever. I can click on start and do the equivalent of what I just did. However, the wonderful people in the WebStorm team gave me a goodie, and this is the way I do it all the time now. I go to my package.json, which has all of those scripts that were in the tool window, and right here, yay, I can run or debug, and instead of doing it in the terminal window, it pops up in a tool window. Does the same thing, but in a visual UI with little things that I can click on. Also some helpers like click here and it will open in the browser. Still the same effect. I can go back to this, remove the exclamations, and it will reload, go over to the browser, and I will see the reload. You noticed perhaps that there's more than one thing I can do in that package.json gutter thing. I can do run or debug. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Over to talk a little bit more about React and what it does. Before opening this, I ran create React app. I did it from the command line instead of from within the IDE. You can say new project and you can say React. Where am I looking for? React app. And it will do the same thing as I did from the command line. And what Create React app does is takes the madness of modern web development, and they pre-chew your food. They own all of the crazy, this version doesn't work with that version, we changed from this lender to that lender, and gives you an out-of-the-box experience, including generating this package.json file. Package.json file, it's a little bit like a setup.py file in the world of Python, but frankly, a whole lot better. It says what the dependencies are, what the development dependencies are. It gives me some things that I can run and an extension mechanism so that add-on tools can have a place to put some of their configuration values. All right, now we are doing start, which runs a development build. What does that mean? It runs let me go back to the run window, a local web server that is not optimized. It keeps all of the artifacts in memory. It doesn't write any files to disk, but it does do that crazy world of transpiling from modern JavaScript to old JavaScript and including CSS and inlining images and 57 other things. And the development server is very fast at watching things, regenerating and rebuilding. But sometimes you need to do your production build. Your production build is the thing that's going to run, you're going to copy the files over to a static server. So I could go and do the same thing I did before, and I could do build, but as we just saw, I've got an IDE for that. I can click run build. And this will go off, it'll light up my CPU fan as it takes the universe and squeezes it down to the smallest possible artifacts that can be delivered over a 2G phone to Africa, and creates a new directory at the top level called build with a website. It's a website with an index.html and a lot of squished stuff with these little cache thingies in it. One optimization I do, I hope I get this right, is I always mark this directory as excluded so that the IDE, PyCharm, WebStorm, etc., doesn't index it and offer those choices up when I'm doing autocomplete, and as I'm rebuilding, doesn't re-index the universe. So with that in mind, this is a little tour of the IDE, a little tour of Create React App, getting a React app started. I will take any questions if we have them.
No, we are good so far.
All right, good. All right, so feel free to tell me things like don't need to mark the directory as excluded. But,
no, that's right. Like I really recommend to exclude this directory. Otherwise, you will see all the generated code in your when you do go to file or like go to symbol. That's not what you want.
Right. And on some other web frameworks where it doesn't do things in memory, it's writing files to disk every character that you type. And the IDE is trying to keep up with you, re-indexing it. It's a really smart thing to mark as much as excluded as you can. Let's go over to what we're going to do next is project cleanup. We're going to go into this step of the tutorial. And what we're going to do is try to talk a little, we're going to try and get the code generated by Create React App, which is a scaffolding tool. We're going to strip out a whole bunch of stuff that we don't need for the tutorial so we can concentrate, but also show you a couple of IDE tricks along the way. So we go back to the IDE, and I have this start process still running. That's good. I want to, first of all, I'm going to go back to my code, hide that, go back to my app.tsx. I'm going to be brave and turn off the project tool and use the IDE to navigate rather than using a tree of files. And what I want to do first is show reformatting code. So for example, I see that I've got 2 indents and I'd like 4. I could do that manually. Oh, actually, I should turn on Presentation Assistant so you can see my keystrokes. When I reformat the code, it indents it according to my policies, and it even added the semicolon. So you see that Create React App -- TypeScript for some reason generated this block without a semicolon, which is weird because the line above it has a semicolon. Reformat code does the janitorial work for me. Thank you, WebStorm. Life is too short to be manually re-indenting your code. I could also go and do the test file that goes with this. So I'll load it this way. And we'll talk about testing in just a second. I skipped over that because we're going to do it visually in this step. I'm sorry, in the next step. This is also not indented correctly, so I will reformat that code as well. Linting is a complicated topic. It's in the world of Python, we know about it. You know, we talk about PEP8 and Flake stuff and Black and all these other things. The world of Java and those other compiled languages, not so much. The world of JavaScript, linting has been a big thing for a long time. It's a fiddly thing to configure. It's a fiddly thing to keep up with. Create React App does that for you. For TypeScript, they switched recently to the latest ESLint and deprecated TSLint. And so we're using ESLint, and I know that we're using ESLint because the package.json says that we're using ESLint, and it's extending the built-in stuff. And thanks to WebStorm, PyCharm automatically knows about that and will apply whatever rules it can. Now, I say that ESLint does linting. As far as style settings, the Create React App project actually says ESLint's really just about mistakes, not about, hey, I like 123 characters. For that, they recommend Prettier, which is a full-blown, it's not so much about code quality, it's more about style, a full-blown style tool that's probably the most popular one in the world of JavaScript now. All right, next up, I want to start the process of cleaning up my code. I'm going to go back to app.tsx. A lot of this stuff I'm not really going to need. So I'm going to take this entire div, I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to replace it. Did that last time. I'm going to replace it using the built-in Emmet support, which is a shorthand technique for generating trees of HTML. So I'm going to say div greater than h1 tab. See what it did? Yay! And I'm going to type hello React to finish that up. Now, you can see that we already have a little bit of an issue. The IDE is telling us there's a cleanup on aisle 5. Line 2 has an unused import. And in fact, if I opened my TypeScript tool and showed project errors, I thought it would show that. Maybe I have to type for it to get to do that. I've got an error up there, but line's too short to have to go think about that all the time. There are 2 keystrokes that I do all the time: reformat code and optimize imports, which goes and removes dead imports, resorts all of my imports according to my policies, works on the Python side as well. Sometimes when I'm stuck and I can't think of what to do, I'll just sit there and hit optimize imports 5 times until I figure out what I'm supposed to do. Now, along the way, I'll bring it back up the project tool. I just took out, let me come back here. I just took out that logo. So there's a file that's no longer needed. Over here is the logo, and I'll hit enter and I'll do a safe delete. I'm about to delete this app.css, which isn't needed. But let's say I go over here and delete the file, and I say safe delete. The IDE is going to help me and tell me, warning, there's something somewhere in this project that is using that resource. And I can bail out now, or I can say view the usages and find the places that it's being used. Let's say I was actually on a different file, and I'd be like, oh, okay, what is that? Oh, yeah, you're right. You're smarter than me, IDE. I need to remove that usage first. So I will remove that line and then come back over and delete this file, and safe delete works fine on it now. My logo.css is removed, but I also have index.css, which isn't needed as well, and I will delete. No, actually, it's used in the HTML file. So let's see, app.css is gone, logo SVG is gone, and yep, I'm good. So that's safe delete helping us as we do some cleaning up and some refactoring. Let's show some more IDE goodness. This is one that bites me every time. Let's say I forget to do my import of React. I suddenly get a whole bunch of warnings telling me something's wrong. What is it that's wrong? Well, the IDE will actually tell me exactly what's wrong and let me fix it. I made a reference, I do an Alt-Enter, add import statement. It knows the correct import, that this is a TSX, which is like JSX file, and that React must be imported for that to work. How did it know that this was a special flavor of JavaScript? In the settings, if I go to JavaScript language, all right, yep. The IDE correctly figured out that this was a React JSX style project, and it should use the semantics that apply to JSX for that. Let's say that I had an import of app and I want to change it to my app, but I'm worried about breaking it in my tests or some other place. I don't even remember where I put the dang file. I could do a right click and do find usages and let it tell me all the places. So for example, it's used in this test. I can also go in the reverse direction. I'm sitting on a usage. I want to go back to the definition, just like PyCharm in Python, Command B on the Mac goes to the declaration of the file. Now, I could go and manually choose all of those places and rename them. I am a man of a certain age. I can't remember all that stuff. So I need help when I'm renaming, and that help is called refactoring. I want to let the IDE do the renaming for me. So I'm sitting on the symbol, and I do Control T, rename, and I say my app. Now watch what WebStorm, this is great. Watch what the IDE does next. There's a convention in the world of React that your file name should match the name of the default export. And it's offering to rename the file. It's also going to, behind the scenes, fix the Git, add to Git for that. And so now everything, I'll go back to all the files using it, and it works. But let's say I decide, oh my God, that's a terrible idea. Go put it all back. I want it to go back and be app. Well, I could go look at everything that's changed and manually do it, but that was all one undo transaction. I say undo, all the usages change, the definition change, the file is put back the way it was, and Git is back the way that it was. One small note, if you want to do a refactor rename, you don't have to go, go to there. Don't go to there. If you want to refactor rename, you don't have to go to the definition. We could do it from the other end, from a usage. We can do a refactor rename there as well. All right, with that in mind, we showed a little bit of cleaning. We showed a little bit of using React and JSX, and we showed a little bit about how the IDE can be our janitor for us. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions about that exclude action.
Sure.
The question was, does it add automatically files to gitignore? I know that it doesn't. Can you please show us how to add files and folders to gitignore?
Good point. So we're talking about this .gitignore file, which is usually at the top, but it can be anywhere. And it contains patterns that will tell Git or the IDE, don't worry about me for prompting that there's a file that's not in Git. So for example, at the top, if I said todo.rst, it's going to ask me if I want it in Git. And if I say no, it's going to be mad with a red. But if I choose a pattern like .dsstore or npm-debug.log and add that, npm-debug.log, then it's not going to prompt me for putting it in Git because it's in the .gitignore. Now, what if I rename that and put it as XXX? Then this file, oh no, it still matches the pattern. No, it doesn't. What if I had a file like todo. And I do want it in there. I could manually go edit.gitignore, or I can alt-enter. Can I alt-enter? Nope. So I have to do this and say add it to my .gitignore. Do I not see this? Oh, git. Yep, add the .gitignore. So the IDE can help you with the process of putting files into your .gitignore. Does that answer the question?
Yep, that does. Let's move forward.
Anything else, or should I go on?
Let's go on.
All right, good.
I handled everything else.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's switch over and talk about testing. And this is an unusual tutorial because I want to teach you the concepts of React and TypeScript, not with a browser, but with a test, to teach you about staying in the flow, staying in the IDE, and not switching between 20 different windows. I didn't show running the test before. You can come and create React app has built-in support for running the tests. So for example, this test could be run with this npm script. And it fires up and says all the tests run. And then if I make a change and say expect, I'll let the autocomplete go, expect 1 to be 2 and save, then it will tell me my test failed. But that's not very visual. Let's close that. And just like we have a visual run tool that you see down here, we also have visual testing to go with visual debugging, visual coverage, visual profile, visual VCS, visual database, all those other things. So I'm going to use visual testing. I'm going to, for now, manually create a run configuration to really show what this is about. I'm going to make this a run configuration of type Jest, which is the test runner adopted by the React project from Facebook that is bundled and pre-configured in Create React App. So Jest is supported out of the box. The only thing I need to do, let me tell you, WebStorm has really helped us on this. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that they understand by default. The only thing I want to do is pass an option to say watch all. So it looks for any changes, not just, it reruns all the tests when anything changes. Watch only runs files that changed. So I say watch all, apply, okay. And now I'm going to run this run configuration. I'm going to get a new tool window down at the bottom showing me the output of my tests. And I can, for example, I could shut off the running of the dev server because I'm not going to be using a browser right now. I'm going to be using the test tool, don't need to do recompilation twice. Over in the test, it tells me exactly what happened. Here is the test in this file, it failed. This is the expected versus the actual. Let's say I was in a different file and I need to quickly jump to the failing test. Click on it, it opens the file, puts me on the line, tells me in the gutter which tests fail, and gives me a little squiggly on the assertion that actually failed. If I change this to be fixed and save, it reruns the tests automatically. I don't have to think about it. It's all green. We're all good. So that's a big help on getting into the flow, doing your React development with tests, and having visual test runner output. As far as TDD basics and getting into the flow, I'm going to talk about the way I do things. What I do is I don't have tabs. I've turned off tabs, but I like to have my code on the left, the test for that code on the right, and the visual test output on the bottom. Since I don't have tabs, I do split vertically, which divides my screen in two, and then I open up the test. And so now I can see the code that I'm writing, the tests that I'm writing, and the visual output all at the same time. I can use Alt-Tab to switch back and forth between these without having to use the mouse. A lot of what we're talking about with turning off tabs, turning off the project tool, is to keep your fingers on the keyboard. Okay, let's do a real test. And I'm about to reflect a place where I've gone off script from the tutorial because Create React App has changed since I did the tutorial. I will update it once everything settles out. I'm going to be using Enzyme, but they've switched to a different assertion framework. So I need to get some things installed in order to use Enzyme. I'm going to copy this line. If there's a place I'm going to screw up, it's in the next 3 minutes. So I'm going to install these NPM packages. And then I need to wire up in this file an adapter from Enzyme so that my Jest tests will automatically load Enzyme support. I'll copy that. That last line is no longer needed with the latest Enzyme. I will create a new file in here. Do this. No. I do that every time. Set up test. Is it test or tests? Test. Test.ts in the source directory. Yes, I do want to add it. I'm going to paste that. And it's red squiggly because we're still installing the packages. And what this will let us do is use some assertions in our tests. So for example, I'll come back over to here. For example, I can now write a test using something called shallow, which is from Enzyme, and it pretends to be a DOM, pretends to be a very fast DOM that I can make a wrapper and load some things on. I'll go ahead and copy that so that I don't have to retype it. You know, the funny thing is I did this step yesterday. It should be in my cache, but one can't expect such things. All right. All right, indexing has now run, right? Is that correct? Shallow is not defined. All right, so I'm in good shape. This will catch up in a second. I'm in good shape because I don't have the import. So I'm going to let the IDE do the import for me. That is a big feature in the world of Python as well as the world of JavaScript. Our IDEs mean just type your symbol and let it generate the import for you. Most people go up to the top, write your import manually, go back to where you were, try to remember where you were. So let's see if I save this. All right, test pass. Go back to my code, let the squigglies catch up. And I'm good. I now have Enzyme installed and it is correctly determining that. If I make this change and save, the tests will run and they'll fail. This is an addition I believe WebStorm did recently to do a visual background to show me exactly what changed. Thank you. It saves a lot of time trying to stare at something until you figure out what went wrong. So I also want to do a test on a paragraph that I'm about to add. I'm going to do test-driven development. I'm going to write a failing test first. Let me fix this. I'm going to write a failing test first and then do the implementation. So the failing test is it should render the paragraph and do my anonymous inline function. And I'm going to say, I'll copy these 2 lines, put them down here. I'm going to find a paragraph, and I expect its text to be nice TDD. When I save, oh, I've got my tokens wrong. What is missing? Double, wrong symbol. All right. And it didn't find a paragraph. The text is on none because nothing matched, which is exactly right. Yay, my test failed. I'm doing TDD. All I have to do is add a nice TDD paragraph, save, and I've done TDD. I wrote a failing test. The IDE let me know exactly what was wrong, and I went and did the implementation in the code. I will stop there and take any questions if we have any.
Yeah, we don't really have any questions. I wanted to tell you how much I actually love that there is this small highlighting in the actual test in the place where the failure occurred.
I'll put it back so we can.
Yeah, and this way you can actually just close the test tool window, like get it out of your way and just see like the red icons next to the failing test and then see the error right in the editor.
Yep. Yeah, when did you add that?
Yeah, I think it was like a year ago or something.
All right.
Yeah, so just close the test tool window, like, and just enjoy the whole editing experience.
Yep. Yeah, the number of times I've stared for like 5 hours at 2 strings and I couldn't spot what the
Yeah.
difference was.
Yeah, I
All
think
right, Amr.
this exact like highlighting in the tool window, it actually comes from Jest itself, but this click to see the difference, it's from WebStorm, and then you can open like the regular diff view in WebStorm and see what's been going on.
Oh, great. Okay, I didn't know it came from Jest. Good. Let's talk about 2 topics that combine for a great TDD experience. Code has problems, tests have problems. Poking around randomly with console log, hoping to stumble across the problem, not a very in the flow way to work. We have a great visual debugger in PyCharm for Python. We have a great visual debugger in WebStorm for Node. Let's use that visual debugging along with visual testing to have a really productive experience. So first, I'm going to remove this line because it's no longer needed. And I'm going to use TDD to make our greeting, hello React, a little more dynamic so that the word React can be parameterized a little bit. And I'm going to break the rules a little bit. I'm going to start with an implementation that, and I apologize, this is a functional component in the write-up. It's a class because Create React App changed recently to generate functional components for everything. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to make a function. Actually, I think, yeah, I'm going to make a function called label. And it's going to be an arrow function. I'll talk about those a little bit more later. And it's going to return hello React. And that's what I'm going to have for right now for the level of dynamicism. We'll add more to this later, but I want to substitute this and use a dynamic value, and I use autocomplete and it will do the autocompletion for me. And now, let's see, what are you mad about? I don't have much. It's just one. I don't know if that's true. Well, what I will do is I will put this in here, which is where I should have had it anyway. All right. When I save this and it reruns, the test passed because I didn't change the contract. It expected hello React. It got hello React. But I didn't write a test for this. So let's say it generates a label. And actually, no, I need that up here. It generates a label. One of the interesting things about this is nothing more than, I'll do an export const, yep. This is nothing more than TypeScript. I don't need a DOM. I don't need vast amounts of transpiling in order to test label. I just need to get a label. So I'll say const a equals label and autocomplete, and it will generate the import for me. And I will expect a to be hello React. And let it reformat, and now I'll have 4 tests, and all 4 tests pass. React and all these front-end frameworks want lots and lots and lots of teeny tiny little components. And so when you can do these individual components and test them, especially without a DOM, then that really helps. Okay, now we didn't need a fake DOM, like I said. Let's imagine, though, we want to make it a little bit slightly more dynamic, and we want to make it uppercase. We want just the word React to be uppercase. So I'm going to make this test fail. And in fact, I'm going to make it fail up here as well. And now when I save, the test fail, which is a good thing. And I want to pass an argument to this now and start the process of implementing this so I can have something that's uppercase. So I'll take the word hello out and only have the label be that and say, well, let's see. No, I'll leave it like that. I'll put the word react in that I'm going to pass to that little bit of dynamicism, and I'm going to run it, and it's going to fail because these failed. But even if I fix that, this is an interesting point about fail faster. I'll talk about that. That test passes, but TypeScript is telling me I broke the contract. I broke the contract because I'm passing an argument to an anonymous arrow function that didn't expect an argument. And because TypeScript told me that, WebStorm got right in my face with a red squiggly and helped me fail faster. Why do I say fail faster? I didn't have to wait for the test to run. I didn't have to write a test to know that I failed that contract. So now I need to do the process of fixing this contract. What I'll do first is go and put a value here. Let's see, I'll get the test passing by making this into a template literal. Now I could do the work to change those to be template literals, but I have a nice handy intention here. I can do a template string. Thank you, WebStorm. And I can take that and say, what am I going to call this? Name. And it will fail because I'm not providing a name. So now I need to provide a name here. And now my test will run again, except that expecting the .to upper. And now my test will pass of undefined. Let's see. Name is coming into. Because I'm sorry. This is because this is expecting me to provide. It was in the test that it was failing. So the test passed, but I still have a red squiggly because I had to do one more thing for TypeScript. I need to give it a type for this value so that the compiler will know not just I expect an argument, but an argument of a certain type. This is like type annotations in Python 3.6 or later. Now, we're all working good. Let's say, though, that I didn't have TypeScript or I'm just not all that smart, and I changed this to 42. Fail faster. You see how the IDE immediately red squiggled? And it's because I adopted TypeScript, and I put type information, and I broke the contract. I haven't saved yet. My test hasn't told me I failed, but fail faster. The IDE helped me fail faster. Now, when I save, I'll get an error because numbers don't have a method to uppercase. But let's just imagine I'm like, it's been a long day. Gosh, I've just been doing this all day long. I can't understand what the problem is. I need to go poke around a little bit. This is the combination with visual debugging. I'm going to set a breakpoint here, and I'm going to run just this one test, but I'm going to run it under the debugger. It's going to fire up the test runner, but it's going to fire up the test runner under our visual debugger, and it's going to stop on that line. And I can start poking around, or I can step into. And now I'm over here. Like, what is the problem? I don't get it. I'm going to highlight this code. I'm going to right-click and say evaluate expression. I'm just going to poke around until I figure out what exactly is happening. Why is this not working? Why is that? Oh, I don't get it. Why is that not? What is the type of name? Oh, it's a number, and numbers don't have a to uppercase. Now I figured out the problem because I combined visual debugging with visual testing. I didn't console log all over the place, hoping to stumble across the problem. I figured it out now. I can let my code continue to run. Now I can go back and put this back the way it was and know that my tests now pass correctly. It's important to note, you put these console log statements in your code and you accidentally check them in, and now, browsers are getting whole bunches of stuff that you never intended. So let's do a couple of things to clean up before I take some questions. I got rid of that breakpoint. I closed the debugger tool window. Now the tests will pass again, and they're all green here, so that's good. I'm going to reopen the tool window, the run tool window, and we're all back. This will go away in a second. I've done some kind of brain fart that I didn't expect to do, so I will hopefully get that sorted out when I refactor this correctly. Any questions that have come in that I can take?
Yes, we have a question about TDD best practices and tips. Do you have any?
Sure. I will start with the obvious one that sounds like a grown-up scolding their children, but I really mean it. Start with your tests. Don't write a whole bunch of code and then write your tests at the end. I say that not because of quality, and I'm not telling you to eat your vegetables. It's just a better way to work. You can get in the flow, you feel under control, you feel fast. You make a mistake, you can look at exactly where the problem is. The IDE has a chance to help you. Beyond that, embrace what we might get to later, the single responsibility principle. Lots and lots of small things, because those things are all very testable. Got anything else?
Yes, another question about testing in React. Do you usually only check if the DOM has rendered the correct text and what they contain, or do you test also other stuff?
That is a very good question. It's very similar to in Python testing for people writing views in Flask or something like that. And you can just test the string-oriented interface. But with Enzyme and with its kind of successor React testing library, you can grab the component and you can poke around on state on the component if you're doing local state, or calling other methods, or calling helper methods directly. So there is more to life than just testing kind of the HTML interface.
Gotcha. The React testing library, is that what you've meant as an alternative for Enzyme, or was it something different?
Yeah, I believe, I don't want to speak out of turn. I believe Enzyme is like everything in the world of React. Every 6 months things change. I don't think that that React testing library is by default in Create React App generated projects. Let me look.
I don't think so.
No, it's not. But it is. Hey, no, I just changed it and fixed. It is, I believe, in the docs, the updated docs for Create React App, it is the thing suggested as the first choice, I think.
Interesting. Another question.
Feel free to prove me wrong on that, but certainly for, I think, the combination with TypeScript, it's considered more up to date.
Yeah, we have another question. Is it possible to see code coverage in PyCharm?
PyCharm Professional Edition, which is what I'm showing, has visual coverage on Python code. It ships with a private copy of coverage.py, but really you should install coverage.py in your virtual environment. And we will then give a very pretty face for analyzing coverage information. We'll give you a native widget table that you can dive down, but we'll also put in the gutter colors indicating lines that are covered, lines that aren't covered. You can click on it, get more information, and WebStorm gives us that as well, I believe, for JavaScript code. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, you can run your Jest tests with coverage and see the coverage report.
All right, so I will say run. I don't want to do just that one. I want to do all tests. Something rerun. Run all tests with coverage. That's the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that's right. I'm not 100% sure that it will work with the watch all, but I think probably it will. Oh, yeah, right.
Look at that. You took a very big gamble on that one with the combination of TypeScript and the latest Create React app. So yes, I can dive into this. I can see 100 lines covered, but index.tsx, these are the gutter decorations telling me lines that aren't covered.
Cool.
That is cool.
Thank you. Yeah, we have 10 minutes left, I think, and we have a bunch of questions. So I suggest we answer these questions, and maybe we will cover everything in the second
and
webinar.
Anybody who wants to ping me on Twitter later, I will talk to you until you get a court order telling me to stay away. So let's take the next question.
Yeah, how can you use TDD to confirm, for example, that a footer is actually stuck to the bottom of the window, or maybe that is actually in the fixed position?
Oh, so you're getting into the equivalent of CSS state. And that is exposed from JavaScript, so you could make an assertion. You see these in animation tests, these animation libraries that are JavaScript driven, and in your assertion, you do something to call a method that moves a node, and then you go collect via the JavaScript API the new position, and then you write an assertion to see if it's the same position. I don't know. There's a possibility that React testing library has some automation for that.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about snapshot features that Jest has. Maybe it can also work here. Or maybe you need to do some real screenshot testing, like visual testing.
Yeah, right.
Because probably you can't really ensure with the snapshot that it's actually in the right position.
To explain to our listeners, snapshot is a feature in Jest that is fantastic. It cuts down on your test writing dramatically. It lets you run something, collect some output in a special file, and then all your tests from that point forward, if something changed in your component model or something like that, the outputs of your components, it will flag you that the test broke. The visual testing is an area I haven't done, but I believe it does a pixel by pixel render and then does a pixel diff or something. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the snapshot, it has a representation of your DOM from React perspective, and then you just check that the actual component tree is correct. That's how I see that.
All right, let me show one thing about visual debugging. I'm not going to show it because it takes a little while to set up, but I'm just going to show you in the write-up. You can debug your tests and your code instead of in Node.js's JavaScript if you need a browser, or if you think that Chrome's JavaScript engine is a little bit different than the Node.js. We support making a run configuration of type JavaScript debug. You point it at the URL of the dev server, you tell it to use Chrome, and then when you run something and set a breakpoint, it will stop in the middle of your code and give you the same visual debugging experience in your tests that you would have gotten if you ran it not in Chrome, but inside Node.js. And that is done. It's over the years, the implementation of that has changed. Now it's using an official protocol for the debugger protocol to talk to Chrome. I will use the opportunity to ask a question. I believe that there is some support for Firefox, but the docs kind of say that it's a little suspicious.
Yeah, that's true. I think we should really look into that more in the future. I think they have changed the debug protocol in the Firefox recently, so maybe there is a better way to integrate with that in WebStorm and in PyCharm as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to the next step and see if we can get all the way through this one. This will be a pretty good step to get through. And in order to speed up, I'm going to copy and paste some code. Apologies. I'm going to start, since we aren't going to be doing some of these things right now, I'm going to stick with just the first two tests. Render the heading, render that. I'm going to do optimize imports to clean things up. I wonder why you're mad. I'll presume that's just a burp. And then over here, I'm going to switch to a class-based component. When I redo this, I will fix it and have it be a functional component. Let's make sure the test runner, it's all good. I will tell it to rerun. It will discover two tests. And, oh, that's why, because I'm under the disconnect. Don't want you. I don't want coverage. I want just the regular run configuration. And instead of that, it should be React. Okay, so my tests are running. I've cleaned things back up a little bit. I'm going to add some things back slowly and use TDD as we go along. I will also have, because later we're going to look at it, I will have the start running as well. So the dev server is running. Okay, with that in mind, let's follow along, go on to the next part. Classes and fields in TypeScript and React. So here I have a class with a single method called render, and I want to make this a little dynamic. And so the first choice I could make would be to have a constant label equals React, and then get rid of this and instead say label. This, and it does this dot label. And that's good. The tests still pass. Is that right? What's going on there? Oh, because it's not constant. This is a field. It needs to be inside the method. I don't want it to be a field yet. Sorry about that. It's just a local variable. I'm about to do the field thing. Okay, and it won't be this dot label because it's a local value. All right, const is used instead of var because we're never going to reassign it. My test pass. But I don't want it to be inside this method. I can't test it. I can't override it. I want it to be a field. Now, I want to show the IDE helping on this. So I'm going to go back to the way it was, and I'm going to show that I could refactor and extract this to a variable. And I'm going to say that this is label, and I'm going to say this is a const. And it did all the work for me. And in fact, it said, maybe this is going to contain some markup, so I'm going to make it JSX. But instead, it's just a string. It's just a string, don't need to do that. Okay, that was good. What if, though, I wanted it to be part of the class instead? I could select that, refactor, extract to a field, number 6. And I'm going to call this label. I'll say that it's private. And it again did this part, which is good, but I don't particularly need it for the test that I'll be writing. And I let the IDE do the refactoring for me. So now I've got it up to the place that I wanted to get to. And I'm going to start the process of implementing some features on this, including event handling. So event handling is about logic. There are these things called arrow functions in ES6, which are small anonymous functions. They're called arrow functions because they look like an arrow. And they're very handy. You see them all over the place. So I want a click handler here, which pops up an alert. So let's say I did on click. I get some IDE completion for me with the JSX naming of on click. And I'm going to do a hello world. All right, let's see. Oh, yes, this is part of the demo. So I can save this, and it all works fine, but I get a TypeScript error. I say it works fine because if I go over to the browser, oh, because I can't do that. Let's see. Oh, sorry, I needed an alert. That's why. All right. And now my app actually works correctly. It pops up the alert. However, I get a TypeScript error. Now, why do I get a TypeScript error? Because OnClick is expecting the value that is assigned to it in the curly braces to be a mouse event. What did we assign? We did an immediately executed alert. It didn't happen on the click, it happened immediately. So we need something that happens later. And how are we going to do this later? The first thing we could do is this arrow function thing. All right, and now TypeScript is happy and my tests are happy. However, when I go and take a look at this, let's see if this is happy. I think this is lying. I might be wrong. Let me continue because we're going to be, we're already running low on time. In this, we have to be careful because arrow functions are considered bad form. They're immediately executed and re-rendered all the time. And that's not good for the way that components and the virtual DOM and everything works in React. I will just skip to the end. What we want to do is change this to be a handler that we move off. I'll take that. And we want to say this dot handle label, which doesn't exist yet. And then down here, I want to make a method, and I'm going to say handle, I should have said handle click, handle label. I will skip the intermediate steps. If I make it as a regular method, the this will be wrong. The this will be the event from the click. Instead, I'm going to make it a field that is an arrow function that performs the work. And then this up here, did I misspell it? Yeah, I did misspell it. Thank you, IDE, for helping me. I've now taken something that failed, moved it to something a little more modular, and used this arrow function along the way to solve the problem. I will wrap up here. The next sections will get into more parameterization using TypeScript interfaces to document the contract between parent components and child components. And I believe the very last tutorial step, next to last, gets into testing clicks and events and how to use Enzyme and Jest inside the IDE for that. I'll stop here, take some questions before we go into the wrap-up part.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions and requests about using Redux. So I already promised that we'll cover that in the second part of the webinar. So you have to
Very good. Thank you.
Make sure your tutorial actually covers Redux. Yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, the tutorial does not cover Redux. I'm more of a MobX kind of guy, so sorry. But maybe we can, if there are any questions that aren't specific to Redux, maybe we could take them.
Yeah, I think I have answered more or less everything.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and we are already like 5 minutes late, so right. Let's wrap it up. Yeah.
Got any other questions?
We had a question about any alternative for Python virtual environment for Node.js. I suggested NVM, but maybe you have any other ideas?
Right. NVM is part of the solution. I would say it's kind of a combination of PyEnv and virtualenv. But at the same time, Node.js by definition has the isolation that virtual environments have to shoehorn in because of the local node modules versus the global node modules. Let me go to it. The node under modules directory is similar to the Python lib Python 3 point whatever site packages as a level of isolation. So in some ways, Node.js doesn't even need virtualenv, and NVM gives you PyEnv instead of virtualenv.
Yeah, right. Another question: does Jest have any mocking support?
It's a good question about Jest specifically. Jest in combination with Enzyme, Jest in combination with React Testing Library, definitely. I can't remember if Jest. I believe Jest does have mocking, but most people use the higher level stuff. And that's a very good question. The demands on mocking in JavaScript are a lot harder than what we're used to in the world of Python, because of the asynchronous nature of things, events coming in from every direction, having to handle timeouts, having to handle animations and things. Promises is the big thing that makes mocking a little more challenging.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we are good. Like no questions.
Right, yeah. All right, so we will switch over to the slides. Again, remember, feel free to bug me on Twitter, fill in the after survey and stuff like that. We got lots that we want to cover, lots we want to talk about, limited time. So thank you everyone for spending time today with Ekaterina and me talking about React, TypeScript testing, talking about this idea of fail faster, staying in the flow, things like that. If any of you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us by email or social media. If you'd like to get more information on PyCharm or WebStorm, please go to our website. PyCharm is jetbrains.com/PyCharm. And WebStorm is jetbrains.com/WebStorm. Gotta admit, the WebStorm website looks pretty good these days. We'd love your feedback on this webinar, so please feel free to contact us on Twitter or the survey. There is a survey after this. Fill it in. Let us know. This is a weird format. Please give us information on what worked or what didn't, as well as any ideas you have for the future about what we should do. We'll also provide additional links later on the presentation about the presentation on the blog, to include the recording we will announce on the blog in the next couple of days. One final plug: if this wild world of front-end development, full-stack development is your kind of thing, follow WebStorm on Twitter. Ekaterina does a wonderful job on bite-sized productivity tips. How do you keep up with it?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, our Twitter handle is WebStormID. So yeah, go follow us. Yeah, so I use WebStorm a lot myself, and I try to share a tip with our followers every time I learn something cool and new about the product myself. Yeah, we also have some new and useful features added to the IDE with every update, so we have a lot of new stuff to cover. Yeah, and of course, we often have some ideas and feedback coming from our users. We use that as an inspiration. So yeah, if you have any cool tips, let us know.
There are definitely cool tips. I see those tips come in and I'm like, damn, I have to stop what I'm doing and go try this tip because it's so good. So anyway, thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope you have a nice day. Let us know what you think in the survey. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye. Thanks.